This is an example of a lesson I created a couple of years ago where I was working with some students, and it's a simple activity where we were looking at investigating the boiling point of water, and I probably had a discussion with them about the idea of what will be the effect of adding salt to the water. Can it actually change the boiling point of water? On this front page here you can see a little animation. That animation is not actually built in Smartboard software, but it's something I probably would have got from Google Images just by searching for bubbles or boiling water. During the course of the lesson, I would have had a bit of a discussion with the students. We'd have written some ideas on the board, and by tapping on the screen, I would have actually turned these ideas to text. What's very, very useful, though, with Smartboard software is the inbuilt gallery items. So here, what I've got here are pictures of things which are actually built in the software, which I was actually going to use in the experiment. And it's a very, very good way of actually modeling how students should be setting up equipment. So rather than just describing how they should lay out the equipment, you can literally show them. So you can actually get hold of the tripod by the bottom of the legs, and you can jiggle it around, but moving it by the bottom of the legs. You'd probably talk about a heat-resistant mat, etc., etc. And in this experiment, I said, I'd like you to lay up the equipment like this. So you've got set up a Bunsen burner and a tripod, and you could probably resize that Bunsen burner to actually make it look fairly realistic. You could put a heat-resistant, a gauze on top. Setting the order, you can actually make it look fairly realistic, and then you can say, okay, well, we're going to be heating a beaker of water, and it may or may not have some salt in. And I would actually probably talk about using a blue flame. Now, you can also capture from the internet, believe it or not, animated flames, and this is what I've got here. So I can actually turn my yellow safety flame into a blue flame for heating purposes. And I could probably bring that down a little bit and resize it to make it look a bit more realistic, so it actually fits underneath the tripod. But the students get the idea then clearly that at this point here they need to be heating it. And you could talk about, well, how are you going to handle the thermometer? So I want the thermometer to, you actually have the tip in the middle of the beaker, and be careful when it's actually on the table that it's not rolling off the edge, etc., etc. And by using the same bubble GIF that I actually found on the internet earlier, I could actually say, well, resize that. I want you to heat it until the water is boiling. And you can actually make the water look like it is actually boiling in this presentation. So using the gallery items, you can actually sort of describe fairly complex procedures and make it much, much easier for students to understand what's going on. And notice also in terms of literacy, I've actually got here now the correct spelling for these items, and you can get the students to actually move the words around and match things up. I've also got here a link to a stopwatch, which is something I've actually got built in the background. I'm not going to click on it now because it might not be linked correctly. And then you'd have some sort of summary of the procedure. This is something that was just typed up with a bit of clip art. I often have a pencil or a rubber and a razor type thing like this to indicate where students actually need to do some work. So I've set up a blank table, and we've discussed the recording of the results. I even went around the room in this particular case taking pictures of the students at the time. And here we've got some results showing that by adding the salt we've got some wildly varying results, but a lot of them are over 100 degrees C. And then, of course, you would have discussed that and you'd have graphed it and all the rest of it. But the main point from this is the fact that, I think, very, very useful, is the fact that when you have your gallery, you can use your gallery items, you can lay equipment down as you'd expect to see it in the real world, and then reassemble it in the way that you actually want. So it actually means that some fairly abstract ideas become much more concrete. So I'm just going to go back to construction mode, and at this point here stop the recording.